Do you want to cut but you're unsure where to start? Well, this is the perfect video for you. There's a lot that should be done beforehand, from setting goals to setting some benchmarks to even just figuring out your diet. There just is actually a decent amount of stuff that needs to be done before you should even start your cut, and I'll be going over all of those in this video. The first thing you need to figure out, do you need a cut? Is this something that you actually need to be doing right now, or should you stick to a bulk or doing maintain? Doing a cut can be for a couple different reasons. It could be you don't like the way you look. You're a little too heavy. Maybe your body fat percentage is in the right range. Maybe you just hit the maximum capacity of eating that you can currently do and need to lower your weight so you can eat some more. I personally am starting a cut at the time this video releases, not only because I got in a little too heavy and my body fat percentage is a little high, which I'll show later in this video, but what's the best for you? Now, the best way to actually figure out if you need to go on the cut is to get your body fat percentage and go based off of that. Now, you can actually go to the InBody website, which I linked in the description below, to find a BIA machine near you that you can use to actually find your body fat percentage, which I actually have here, and this is mine. It currently says I'm 204.6 pounds with a body fat percentage of 21.3%, which is right in the area where you need to be doing a cut. Now, most people cut when they get 20% or over, but that doesn't mean that you have to cut if you're over 20%. If you're fine and comfortable with how you are, you can keep bulking to higher percentages. A lot of people do, and you don't have to be over 20% to start a cut. There are some people who start cut at 15% because they feel like that's too much. You can really just cut at any percentage as long as you have a desired weight or a desired body fat percentage. Which brings us to the next part in preparing for cut is setting those goals, the big thing of the pre-cut routine. Now, this is typically the reason why you're cutting, if it's to get lean or lose fat or look better, or in a lot of people's cases, looking lean for the summer, so when they get that summer bod when they go out to the beach. But whatever the reason, you should have a desired body fat percentage or your goal weight and when you want to achieve that weight. Now, you don't have to have a set time, but it generally is better to have a set deadline to make you stick to the cut a bit better. Now, for me, my goal in this cut that I'm going to be doing, I'm setting a deadline starting January 1st to June 1st. That's a 5-month period, and I want to cut down to 12 to 14% body weight. So I'm planning to lose about 24 pounds, get down to 180, maybe a little bit less, and kind of see how I'm feeling at the end of this cut and see if I'm going to go even further, which I probably won't. And this goal can change the closer you get to where you want to be. You could set a goal, for example, with me, I could set a goal for 180, but then I could hit 180 and be like, man, I want to lose even more weight. I want to be even leaner. And I could change it to 170 or from 14% body fat down to 10. But that's really up to you. But having an initial goal is really important, especially for this next step. The next part is benchmarking, and this takes the form in setting pictures, but not only setting pictures, but looking at the goals you set and making a baseline for you to be able to compare after you're finished with your cut. You see yourself every single day, so it's really hard to see like the subtle changes you have, and you grow accustomed to every time you change. So near the end of your cut, you won't actually think you changed too much. Maybe you'll see some fat loss in your stomach, but something you don't see is the face fat. Like, I took pictures of myself at my last cut, not really, but I did take some pictures just from day-to-day life, and I really didn't think I put on that much weight, but then I looked at those pictures and realized I had so much more face fat. I was so much bigger than I was than at the end of my previous cut, which is part of the motivation for me to do my cut now. And also, you get some nice pictures to go with. You can be like, oh, this is my before, this is my after picture, and it's really just a confidence booster. Now, take these pictures whenever. Take a lot of them. I took some pictures in the morning and some in the afternoon, because in the morning, you have no pump going, you just woke up, and I took some later in the day, because that's how I am normally. I also took some nice pictures at the gym because I'm not going to be this big for a while. Benchmarking isn't just about taking pictures, it's about setting baselines for the goals you set so you have something to compare after you lost a lot of weight or you work towards the goal you're trying to achieve. So I ran a mile, it was 9.5 minutes, and my goal by the end of this cut is to run a 5K. So that 9.5 minute mile was pretty bad. I was pretty worn out after that. So now that I have a baseline and I start doing running during this cut, I'll be able to compare that to my 5K time or run another mile when I'm done. Benchmarking is just really important. It's something that will help you motivate, and that motivation is really a key part on being able to get through this cut and not just giving up and going back to the bulk or just eating whatever you want. Next is how to actually accomplish those goals through nutrition. Now, this is the most important part of the cut. This is basically the whole thing that you do for the cut, is making sure you're in a calorie deficit. Now, to actually find if you're calorie deficit, you can go online to websites. So I have Calorie Deficit Calculator US here, and I entered all the information I have for my in-body test. And when I click calculate here, it actually comes down here and shows me what my base calories that I burned just through existing, my maintenance, and my target intake if I want to cut. And this gives me an estimate. This is about 25 pounds over 180 days, so 6 months. Now, this is a good indicator of what my calorie intake should be. And this protein target is not the best. This is kind of just for normal people. But if you're trying to maximize the amount of muscle you retain while going on the cut, I advise about 1 gram of protein per body weight wanted. So I'm 200 pounds now. I want to get down to 180. I'm eat 180 grams of protein each day. You can also use a calorie calculator, which I also have pre-filled out here. If you calculate this, this also gives me my maintain weight and kind of how many calories I want to eat if I want to lose a pound a week and extreme weight loss. So you can see here, this is at 2,400, and this one's also at about 2,400, so that's a good estimate. So something that's interesting about these is if I actually go back here and select base metabolic rate, it gives me 1,900 calories in my base metabolic rate. Here, it gives me 1,900. If you look on the in-body test, which I'll pop up here now, in the bottom right, it actually has my base metabolic rate at 1,900 as well. Which is pretty cool because if the in-body can tell me my basic metabolic rate, and these calculators are almost dead on with the calculations as well, it means that they're pretty good indicators of maybe I should make these my targets. Down here, you can see about 2,400. So this one's lower than this one. So I'm going to go off of 2,400. So for my cut, I'm going to be aiming to have 2,400 calories every day. And this is kind of how you figure out what you should be doing every day. And then from there, you can figure out what your diet is going to be and what you're going to be eating every day. Next is figuring out your diet for when you're on the cut. Now, this step is really important to do before you start cutting because typically you don't know what you're going to be eating. Now, there's a lot of cookbooks. I recommend the Cookbook of Gains. I'll put that link in the description. It's by a great bodybuilder, and there's a lot of really good recipes in here. But trying these recipes before you start your cut is really important because you don't know if you'll like it or not. So you could try making something, and if you don't like it, you're still able to eat food because you're still in a bulk. Whereas if you try to make something like, or if you try to make something like you make a breakfast burrito and you really don't like it while you're in the cut, well, you might not finish it or eat it because it tastes really bad. Well, what are you going to do? Well, you don't have anything cooked, so you're just going to eat something else, maybe fast food. And that's really going to be hard for you to stay on that cut or stick to your calorie goals. So doing this before you start your cut is really important. And just trying out a bunch of different recipes and making sure they fit into your calorie goal. Now, everyone eats at different times and has different eating patterns, so I'm not going to give too many tips on this. However, the one tip I do have is to make sure you have a pre-workout meal. So this is a meal you eat an hour and a half before you go work out, and make sure this is the most nutritious meal of your day. Lots of greens, lots of veggies, just something that can give your muscles the most nutrients as possible, because when you're on the cut, your muscles are lacking the nutrients that it typically has when you're on a bulk. And because of that, there's a lot of risk of injury. Being able to track is really important. Now, there's a ton of apps out there. If you have to pay for something, so be it. There's a bunch of recommendations out there. I haven't used any, so I'm not going to give any recommendations. Keeping track of your calories is just really important to do to make sure that you're sticking to your diet, you're sticking to your goals, and you're mainly hitting the calorie and that protein. Because if you're not hitting that protein goal, you'll end up losing more muscle when you're on this cut than you would want. I advise meal prepping. So I meal prep all 18 meals at the beginning of the week. Because if you cook throughout the week, you might get lazy one day. You might be like, oh, I'm too tired to cook. And then you won't want to cook what you usually make, and you'll end up eating some other thing, which isn't really good for your diet. So meal prepping everything is just something that I like to do and I advise doing to make sure that you have the meals and you don't deviate from the plan. Now for the last part, editing your workout. Now, depending on the workout that you've been doing, you can keep it sort of similar, but there's some things in there that you should probably change. The first thing is, if you're not warming up right now, start doing that, especially on heavy lifts. Your body will be lacking so much nutrients that it's used to having, and because of that, there'll be a high risk of injury. So you need to make sure you're warming up every set, especially on those heavy ones. There's no really special exercise or ways to train to help you through this cut besides doing extra cardio. And if you don't know how to do like dumbbell lifts, this is a great time to learn. Practice makes perfect, and learning the form will help you long term. My last advice is to do some running at the end of your workout. You can do this before as your warm-up, but I wouldn't do it too hard because then you'll get a little too tired. But say if like just do a little bit running at the end, it really helps. Cardio is a great way to increase your cardiovascular health, which will just make you healthier in general. And that's kind of the whole underlying reason of why you cut is to become healthier. And I hope this starting guide was useful and you'll be able to apply some of this information before you start your cut or help you figure out what you need to do a cut. This is my first video to the Faragains channel, so I hope you really enjoyed. I'll be posting a video every week on Friday for the entirety of 2026. A lot of challenge videos with Pokemon cards and mainly just gym related content. So I hope you found this video informative and subscribe for more.